getting pulled into the Epstein matter to divert attention from you and that your administration has something to hide. What's your response?
I have nothing to hide. I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. They went in hoping that they'd find it and found just the opposite. I've been totally exonerated. In fact, Jeffrey Epstein was fighting that I don't get with some author, a sleazebag, by the way. And I've been totally exonerated. No, they're getting pulled in, and that's their problem. I don't know, they're going to have to see what happens. But I watched her in Munich, and she seriously has Trump derangements. And, I've been totally exonerated on Epstein. And it's really interesting because they've been pulled in. Think of it. They've been pulled in. Clinton and many other Democrats have been pulled in.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Hello, and welcome back to Propaganda Loves You for our first Thursday deep dive of the season. So I just wanted to open the show with a quick comparison of what Trump thinks the release of the Epstein files meant for him versus what some of our other representatives have. And then we'll jump into the main topic. But you just heard what Trump said on Air Force One and what he believes the Epstein file release thus far has proven. Total exoneration for him, clearly, is what he's saying. However, Representative Ted Lieu from California had a different view of what the current release of the Epstein files says about Donald Trump. So I want to play that for you, and then we'll jump into our main topic for today. Here is Ted Lieu.
Why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump raping children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press to go look at these allegations, and I'm highly disturbed that Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty, because patronizing is part of the law, the federal sex trafficking law. So Deputy General Todd Blanche just got that wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump. He needs to read the law and investigate these people. He also needs to resign, not only for not knowing the law, but a massive, not only screw up, but the biggest privacy violation in history. They release a lot of pictures of minors unredacted, just violated the privacy of these girls. It is uncalled for what they did. The one thing that they could not do under this law was to invade the privacy of these women now, who were girls at the time, who were victims of sex trafficking. Also, he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, moved her to a minimum security prison, and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons, he's just got to leave the Department of Justice.
Okay, so our main topic today is the Elders of Zion. So we tried to record something about this last week. I wasn't super happy with how it came out. I just didn't feel like I hit enough of the clear points that I wanted to. So this, we're updating a little bit for today. But before I get into kind of like talking through this, I want to talk about the reasons why we're talking about Elders of Zion, the disinformation operation this week, and how it relates to the other topics that we hit on. So obviously, we're talking a lot about Epstein, the Epstein files, and what's coming out through a lot of good reporting from DropSite related to Epstein's connections to the Israeli government, making it look like he was possibly an operative or an asset for the Israeli intelligence apparatus, right? Like that's what it's looking like. So the reason we wanted to talk about the Elders of Zion is this is a very old conspiracy theory or disinformation operation. It's over 120 years old was when this originally started. But it's essentially a conspiracy theory about how Jewish people are trying to take over the world, or it's a conspiracy against Jewish people that says they're trying to take over the world through, and it uses a bunch of different methods. It says that they want to do this through blackmail, financial control, things like that. And so the reason I wanted to talk about Elders of Zion in relation to that is because it's likely going to come back up. You'll likely see people pushing this specific narrative in relation to Epstein, in relation to the state of Israel as it relates to Epstein. And so wanted to make sure that listeners are aware of where this specific conspiracy theory started, where the disinformation op started, how it's morphed over the years, and kind of provide both a historical analysis of that and then kind of some almost a pre-bunk of what you're likely to start seeing in the wild related to this. So to do that, I'll really quickly just talk about the Elders of Zion as a conspiracy theory, where it came from, and then I've got an article that I'm going to read from the Holocaust Encyclopedia that actually has a pretty big section on the Elders of Zion. So let me share this with you guys so you guys can see this article. Right. Just shared the link. Okay, so as I mentioned, the origin of this was actually published in Russia in 1903 by the Tsar's secret police at the time, the Okhrana. It was plagiarized, and we'll talk a little bit more details, but basically where the Elders of Zion came from in the first place, it looks like it came from a couple different publications, but one of the reasons they know that this was fake is it looks like it came from a French political satire called Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, which was written in 1864. So like the original Elders of Zion, they were able to pull various like passages that directly came from this dialogue or were translated from the dialogue. So that's like how they know the original version of this was fake, right? But it continued to morph and change throughout the years, and that's what we're going to talk about. But why did why did Russia put it out in the first place? The Tsar at the time, the government that Russia had at the time was failing. Revolution was on the horizon, and basically the thought was this was creating a scapegoat to deflect the rage that the Tsars were seeing from their population, was the thought here. Again, 120 years old, right? So all the details around this are not exactly perfectly well written out and documented, right? There's a lot of information related to this. So with that, let me read through this article really quick to give the additional background. Again, this is from the Holocaust Encyclopedia. The title for this is called An Antisemitic Conspiracy, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is an anti-Semitic book used to promote hatred of Jews. It was first published in 1903. The protocols contain conspiracy theories about alleged global Jewish power. It is the most widespread anti-Semitic publication of modern times. Key facts that they bring up front: the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a publication that circulates in many languages and forms. It appears in print, on the internet, and other media. There are many different versions of the book. However, all of them promote anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jews. Key fact number 2, Adolf Hitler and the other top Nazi party leaders knew that the Protocols was not factual. Despite this, they used the book to spread hatred of Jews. Number 3, the Protocols has been exposed as a lie over and over again. Nevertheless, the book remains a powerful anti-Semitic propaganda tool. All right, this goes into the main article here. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a publication that first appeared at the beginning of the 20th century. Since then, anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists have used it to support the lie that a secret body of Jews controls the world. Over the decades, many editions and versions of the Protocols have been published. It continues to be published today. In recent years, the Protocols has circulated widely in multiple media, including the internet and social media. The Protocols was first published in a newspaper in the Russian Empire in 1903. The publisher claimed to have discovered a real document that proved there was a Jewish world conspiracy. This was not true. Journalists, courts of law, and governments have since exposed the Protocols as a fake document that promotes anti-Semitic lies. Despite the fact that it is a forgery, people seeking to spread conspiracy theories about Jews have used the Protocols for more than 120 years. The Protocols is regularly adapted to address current events. Its appeal, like the appeal of conspiratorial thinking, relies on its ability to provide simple explanations to a complex world. The next section is called What is the Protocols of the Elders of Zion? The protocols claim to be a secret written record of meetings supposedly held by a group called the Learned Elders of Zion. The meeting notes are fake, the meetings never took place, and the purported leaders, the so-called Elders of Zion, never existed. Early publications included 24 chapters or protocols, meeting minutes in brackets there. Each chapter claims to document the elders' secret plans to control the world politics, the economy, financial markets, media, education, and other parts of society in order to benefit Jews. Other anti-Semitic lies include claims that Jews will destroy Christianity and all other world religions. The protocols also says that Jews will profit from keeping the world in a state of war. There are different versions or editions of the protocols, but they are all used for one purpose: to explain the world's problems by blaming Jews. Blaming someone else for the mistake of others is called scapegoating. The goal for those who promote the protocols is always to blame the Jewish people for various problems in order to demonize them. Next section is called Long-Standing Anti-Semitic Conspiracy Theories and Protocols. Anti-Semitic conspiracy theories have existed for many centuries. These theories have evolved over time using religious, economic, nationalist, and racist ideas to promote hatred of Jews. Jews have been falsely blamed for killing Jesus, fomenting wars and revolutions, and even spreading plagues and epidemics. They have been falsely accused of controlling politics and world economy. Antisemitism became more widespread in the 19th century. During this time, European and North American societies experienced major social, economic, and political changes. There were advancements in communications, including printing technologies. This allowed people to more quickly spread ideas around the world. One strain of anti-Semitism at the time claimed that Jews orchestrated all these changes for their own benefit. Such anti-Semitic conspiracy theories appear in many versions of the protocols. Though the protocols did not invent these prejudices against Jews, it brought them together in a single source. The book reinforces the most popular anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and amplifies them. The origin of the protocols. Where did the lie begin? The first version of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion dates back to 1903. That fall, the protocols were serialized in Znamenia, the Banner, a newspaper in St. Petersburg, Russia. Znamenia was owned by Pavel Khrushchevin. I'm going with Khrushchevin. Pavel Khrushchevin was an accomplished writer and a ruthless anti-Semite. He owned multiple newspapers in the Russian Empire and used them to promote hatred of Jews. In April 1903, anti-Semitic articles in one of Khrushchevin's newspapers helped incite a pogrom in Kishinev. Some scholars are convinced that Khrushchevin was the original author of the protocols. When his newspaper published the text, he authored a foreword and an afterword. He claimed the protocols were minutes from a meeting of the World Union of Freemasons and Elders of Zion. Khrushchevin accused Jews of plotting to control the world. As supposed evidence, he cited the emerging Zionist movement. In line with other nationalist movements at the time, Zionism advocated for an independent Jewish state in the ancient Jewish homeland. Some people have claimed that the protocols is the meeting minutes of the first Zionist Congress held in Basel, Switzerland in 1897. This is not true. In 1905, the protocols was published as an appendix to a book about the coming of the Antichrist. The book was written by anti-Semitic Russian mystic Sergei Nilus. It says the Jews are agents of satanic forces seeking to destroy the world. Next section is the protocol spread around the world. The protocols of the Elders of Zion began to circulate more broadly after the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. That year, the Russian Tsar abdicated his throne in the midst of a popular uprising. Demonstrators demanded food, the end of World War I, and an end to the Tsar's imperial rule. Several months later, the Bolshevik Party seized power in Russia in a coup known as the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Party later became known as the Communist Party. Fear of a similar communist revolution spreading throughout Europe reinforced one of the main anti-Semitic conspiracy theories contained within the protocols. The Jews were to blame for communism and for plotting this revolution. The false accusation is often referred to as Judeo-Bolshevism. In the following years, the protocols found receptive audiences in many other countries. It was translated into dozens of languages and published around the world. A German language edition appeared in Germany in 1919. During the 1920s, versions of the protocols surfaced across Europe and in the United States. There was a French translation in Paris, as well as English translations in London, New York, and Boston. Editions soon could be found in Japanese in 1920, Italian in 1921, Italian, Swedish, and Norwegian in 1921, and Polish in 1923. An Arabic translation was available in Syria by 1925. The protocols inspired many other books that promoted anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Among the best known in the United States was Henry Ford's The International Jew, the World's Foremost Problem. Ford was the founder of the Ford Motor Company. He was one of the most famous and respected people in the United States by the 1920s. The International Jew was first serialized in Ford's newspaper, the Dearborn Independent. It was quickly published as a book and translated into at least 16 languages, including German. Nazi Party leaders, among them Adolf Hitler, took inspiration from the International Jew. As the protocols circulated around the world, the specifics of the text often were modified to address current events and local circumstances. This is one of the reasons why the content of the protocols varies from edition to edition, language to language, and language to language. Nevertheless, the core anti-Semitic ideas in all versions remain the same. Let me pause there for just a second, because that's kind of one of the big things that I want people to take away from this. Like, there's no one protocols of the Elders of Zion. There's tons of these different publications that have come out over different times that have been modified slightly to make it more seemingly believable or fit whatever the socio-political economic is of the times, right? So that's the other reason why this is definitely going to pop back up. I guaranteed, like, there's going to be ties back to this with everything that's going on. So I will read the rest of this, but let me pause there in case there's anything from the first half that you guys are like, to mention or anything that you think was worth hitting on.
Yeah, both of these examples, Khrushchev, right, in 1903, and Henry Ford with the Dearborn Independent, these are two guys with business interests that are crazy that own newspapers. Maybe don't let individuals own newspapers. Let's have like a board of people own newspapers and run it from like an actual council, and not have these independent business interests be put first. There's like clear bias here.
I know when I read that too, I was thinking Bezos, Washington Post,
Totally.
120 years later, not much has changed.
Yeah, and today you're totally right. Like the project does continue, and it's like going to be in the form of Grok. Like Grok is going to be promoting the Elders of Zion bullshit.
Yeah, not to like make it too general, but that thing you just said, Cody, is such a good point to remember, is that the advancement of technology gives us the illusion that things are getting better. And maybe our gadgets are getting better in some ways, but that doesn't necessarily imply an improvement in power relations, right? It doesn't necessarily mean we're more free if we have more advanced technology. That's the whole point of the cyberpunk genre aesthetically, is high tech and low life.
For patriots living in momentum state productivity cycle, quality time has become a luxury many can no longer afford. The authority denies that the rising cost of social participation has ended the American date night. We've simply relocated the experience into the comfort of your own mind.
Introducing the intimacy stream Neuralink. Why waste your freedom points on logistics of a night out when home dates require no lengthy commute, no dress code, and no unpredictable crowds?
My wife and I just finished a double shift at the fulfillment center. We're exhausted and the fridge is empty, but as soon as we sync our links, we're at a 5-star steakhouse in the capital. We don't have to worry about the curfew or the price of a meal. It's just the two of us in the safety of our own home.
And the home date is only one of the intimacy stream's endless modular ecosystems. Today, it preserves your relationship. Tomorrow, it may optimize your grief, your fitness, or your spiritual adherence.
It's honestly better this way. We get the connection we need with the little unproductive time that we have. It's affordable, it's private, and it's perfectly consistent.
Don't let your environment dictate your intimacy. Quality time is no longer a time commitment. It's a setting. Obey. Your loyalty perfected.
Physical connection during intimacy stream usage is not recommended. Obey is not responsible for any emotional estrangement occurring after the link is disconnected. All freedom points are subject to review by the Obey algorithm and may be rescinded due to a lack of social compliance.
Okay, so now we're going to get into how, like we explained a little bit earlier, how it was exposed as a lie, but this article now goes into a bit more detail on this here. So on the left-hand side, there's these little inserts that they have in the article, media essays from the time. So I'm going to read that part first. Well, actually, I'll read the the right-hand side first, and then I'll read this little excerpt piece here. But this section is called The Protocols Exposed as a Lie, 1920s. In 1920, British journalist and diplomat Lucien Wolfe published a book exposing the protocols as a lie. He found that a chapter of the German language novel Biarritz, 1868, Biarritz, contained ideas that were used to fabricate the text. In this work of fiction, Jewish leaders meet secretly in an old Jewish cemetery in Prague. At the end of the meeting, the devil arrives to support them. The following year, the Times newspaper of London declared the protocols a fake and clumsy forgery. The Times discovered that much of the protocols had been copied from a little-known French political satire, Maurice Joly's Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, 1864. There is no mention of Jews in the Dialogue in Hell. Other reports exposing the protocols soon appeared in the United States and in Germany. New York Herald reported Hermann Bernstein published The History of a Lie, The Protocols of the Wise Men of Zion in 1921. 3 years later, Benjamin Siegel, a German journalist, wrote The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, critically illuminated. In a preface to the English edition of his book, Siegel wrote, "This forgery has caused untold misery to the Jews and still exercises an incredible spell on the minds of the seduced masses." And then, like I mentioned, on the left-hand side, there's this Times, August 17, 1921 piece here. It says, in 1921, a London Times article provided proof exposing the protocols of the Elders of Zion as fraudulent. The most widely distributed anti-Semitic publication of modern times, the protocols falsely purports to be the record of secret meetings of Jewish leaders who are plotting to take over the world. The text has been repeatedly discredited since and continues to circulate today. In this London Times article, reported Philip Graves compared passages from Maurice Joly's Dialogue in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu side by side with the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Again, 1864, so that was, like 40 years before the first version of the protocols of the Elders of Zion came into place. This was in order to prove that the protocols were plagiarized. Other investigations revealed that one chapter of the Prussian novel Hermann Biarritz, 1868, also inspired the protocols. So, Times of London reported that this was fake in 1921 and is still used today. Next section here is called Adolf Hitler and the Protocols. During the early 1920s, Adolf Hitler was introduced to the protocols by a leading thinker in the Nazi Party, Alfred Rosenberg. The conspiracy theories in the book reinforced Hitler's already strong convictions that Jews were responsible for Germany's losses in World War I. Hitler referred to the protocols in some of his earliest political speeches in the 1920s. He also wrote about the book in his autobiography, Mein Kampf. Hitler claimed that the protocols revealed the nature and activity of Jewish people and exposed their ultimate final aims. He also predicted what would be called the Jewish menace would be broken after the protocols became more widely known. After he became Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Hitler did not refer directly to the protocols in public speeches, but he often echoed many of the book's lies. Among them was the claim that the Jews were responsible for the spread of communism, this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory known as Judeo-Bolshevism. The next section is Nazi propaganda and the protocols. The protocols have been exposed as a lie more than a decade before the Nazis came to power in 1933. Nevertheless, Nazi propaganda sometimes used the protocols to rally Germans around the idea that Germany needed to defend itself from Jewish aggressors. Even though most Germans likely did not read the protocols, they would have been familiar with its anti-Semitic lies from relentless Nazi propaganda campaigns. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Germany's Minister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, understood that the protocols could be used to demonize Jews. Long before he assumed the role, Goebbels referenced the protocols in his diary. He wrote, "I believe that the protocols of the Elders of Zion is a forgery. However," Goebbels continued, I believe in the inner but not the factual truth of the protocols." For Goebbels, what mattered was that the protocols could advance the Nazis' anti-Semitic agenda. Some of the Nazi Party's most aggressively anti-Semitic propaganda made use of the protocols. For example, Julius Streicher published the anti-Semitic newspaper Der Stürmer, ran many stories during the 1930s that relied on ideas included in the protocols. The Nazi Party's central publishing house, Franz R. Verlag, issued 22 editions of the protocols between 1919 and 1938. Protocols exposed as a lie in the 1930s. Nazi sympathizers beyond Germany also circulated copies of the protocols. Their actions were challenged in 2 court cases. In 1934, a case was brought down in Grahamstown, South Africa, against the leaders of the South African Gentle National Socialist Movement, also known as the Grey Shirts. These Nazi sympathizers were sued and fined for circulating a document that resembled the protocols. A division of the South African Supreme Court ruled that the protocols was a defamatory document. In 1935, a Swiss court fined 2 Nazi leaders for distributing a German-language edition of the protocols at a demonstration by the National Front. The National Front was an extreme nationalist anti-Semitic organization in Bern, Switzerland. The presiding justice at the trial declared the protocols ridiculous nonsense. Nazi editions of the protocols during World War II. During World War II, from 1939 to 1945, Germany invaded and occupied much of Europe, including parts of the Soviet Union. The Nazis circulated the protocols in countries they occupied. Even after millions of Jews had been murdered as part of the final solution in 1943, German authorities published editions of the protocols in Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. Versions of the protocols and other texts that promoted lies about Jewish conspiracies also appeared in German-occupied France, Belgium, and Poland. The protocols exposed as a lie after the Holocaust. In 1964, a U.S. Senate subcommittee released a report declaring the protocols was a vicious hoax. The report was written at a moment of heightened concern about communism during the Cold War. It explained that the protocols are one of a number of fraudulent documents that peddle the myth of an international Jewish conspiracy. The Senate called the protocols gibberish. Antisemitism, Holocaust denial, and protocols today. Exposure of the protocols of Elders of Zion as a lie after the Holocaust failed to lessen the book's power. The protocols and conspiratorial thinking about Jews continued to fuel anti-Semitism. Editions of the protocols in dozens of languages are available for print online. References to the book are often posted on social media. According to a 2024 report by the U.S. State Department, the protocols retain significant influence in Russia, its country of origin. Some newer editions of the protocols blame the Jews for COVID-19 pandemic. They also blame the Jews for war and acts of terrorism, such as the attacks in the United States on September 11, 2001. In some areas of the world, the protocols have been included in school textbooks. It has even become the basis for television programs. The protocols has also been used in political propaganda by heads of state. For example, the former president of Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, from 2005 to 2013, has drawn on themes from the protocols in his anti-Semitic rhetoric. Other influential political and social leaders, especially in the Middle East, have publicly claimed that the book is authentic. The protocols has been used by the terrorist organization Hamas to justify calls for annihilation of both Jewish people and the state of Israel. Some recent versions of the protocols deny the Holocaust happened. Other editions distort the history of the Holocaust. For example, some editions falsely claim that Jews cooperated with Nazis in order to establish the state of Israel. For the purpose of these contemporary adaptations, the protocols continue to be the same, promoting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jews. So that is the whole article on this from the Holocaust Encyclopedia. Well, I'll say just to reiterate what I kind of stated at the beginning with this and the intention of talking about this. One, it's kind of a founding conspiracy theory, founding disinformation operation to really kind of understand how these things work. Two, it's likely that this or a version of the protocols of Elders of Zion is going to be coming out associated with what's going on right now and the connections that they're seeing between Epstein and the state of Israel. And then I think the last thing that I'd want to mention is just not to try and put too fine a point on it, but when we're talking about Epstein, when we're talking about like these files, the crimes that were committed there, trying to make sure that we as much as possible are looking at the right perpetrators or criminals, right? Like looking at the right people here, making sure that we're not scapegoating an entire population of people based off of a religion by what's occurring, right? That we're looking at the actions of groups of people and looking at it that way, not based off of old disinformation or conspiracy theories. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to bring this up and talk to you.
I was going to say that totally don't scapegoat this class, this false class that's written Elders of Zion and published. They actually publish a list of the people that you should blame, and their names are out there, and it's by Forbes every year, and it's the billionaire class, and they rank them, and they tell you the details, and sometimes they give you pictures of their estates, and that's the actual list we should be going after. Isn't it crazy they publish it? Like it's full, like you would think like they would hide this kind of stuff, but They publish this, and then maybe that's it. Like, it's so boring. Like, the real world is so, maybe boring. Of like, this is the list. This is who's actually doing it. Let's make up a myth of like something to tell us and ruminate on. And it's also used by them totally. Each one of them owns a newspaper that is publishing one of the 23 versions that got that's the game.
Yeah, I think that's, and I mean, they said it in the article here. They talk about it too, right? It's offering easy solutions to very difficult problems. I mean, just scapegoating of an entire, section based off of just their religion, I guess. Traditional authoritarian scapegoating.
Yeah, there's so much here to work with. So I don't even really know where to start. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the whole situation in an organized way. Apologies if it doesn't come out very organized. But it's important to have like clear terms and concepts about our worldview and to situate ourselves in a perspective of history. And that's why I often say that we're still living in the period of European colonialism. Because when you trace the long period of European colonialism through the Atlantic slave trade, through the colonization of the Americas, through the exploitation of Africa and Asia and the Middle East, you can see a logical extension of the same kind of operation taking place of really wealthy feudal European lords developing the system of commerce that starts to exist outside of the aristocracy and becomes what we now call capitalism. And so the history of colonialism and capitalism are like the same history. And when we look at things from that point of view, we can start to make more sense out of these things that seem vague or confusing. And so I look at the state of Israel as a settler colonial project. It's a specific example of the same kind of logic. And when you look at the history of colonization in Palestine, it goes back to the early 1880s of when, around the time, if you just Google like Zionist colonialism in Palestine, you'll see tons of information about it. But in the late 1800s is when Europe was really trying to exploit Africa. A lot of the European nation states were going after Africa, trying to lay claims on this and that. And around the same time, the Jewish diaspora was kind of developing the idea of nationality. We don't really have a nationality. And so there's this legitimate question of a nationhood for people who didn't feel like they had a certain kind of nationhood. And so radical elements of that, right? This is not Jewish people writ large. This is like a right-wing radical element that wanted to colonize Palestine for historical religious reasons. And the sort of propaganda line that was pushed often that you can hear modern Jews reflect on when you hear them talk about this. Seth Rogen has talked about this publicly, but like they were told a land without a people for a people without a land. The idea that it's just empty land, right? Palestinians had been living there for thousands of years. They were still living there. And so the expulsion of Palestinians in this Zionist logic was a necessary part to build a nationhood. And so I guess with all of this Elders of Zion propaganda that's going on that you're giving us the details of, a flip side of that I'm sort of thinking about is how through a sort of cynical logic that the Israeli government perpetrates, they are sometimes the biggest beneficiaries of this conflation of Judaism writ large as an ethnicity with the state of Israel. Because anytime Israel as a government gets blamed for something, they can say, oh, you're anti-Semitic, you're just blaming Jews for all your problems. We have to be very clear about this, right? Israel is a government. It is a nation state. It is an institution that has certain biases and goals and projects and stuff. And so we can't just allow them to conflate any criticism of that government with Jews writ large. And that's why I think I'm not a Jewish person. I'm not a Palestinian person. I'm a white kid who grew up Protestant in the American South, and I'm just trying to make sense of the world. But I feel like for people who are in the conversation, who are talking about it, who have some connection to this stuff, especially if I try to imagine myself as a Jewish person in the 21st century, paying attention to all this, I would feel some sort of moral obligation to be clear with people in conversations. Like, they don't represent me. That government is not my government. This is separate. These are separate things. And we have to insist on that rhetorically. So I just kind of, maybe I'll stop there. But that's kind of the point. It's like, be really clear about the context of the history of the power. You can talk about capitalism and colonialism as a specific kind of historical project without getting into all this messianic religious weirdness, right? I don't know. And the other thing I was going to say about Zionism, particularly as an ideology, it's not an exclusively Jewish ideology. One of the most ardent American Zionists, Joe Biden, regularly said, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. He is a proud Zionist. He'll readily say that. As a Christian, there is a strain of Christian Zionism that plays into all this religious stuff in a cynical way. So, yeah, I guess that's what I want to say. Yeah.
Two things, and I'm going to do in reverse order. That Christian Zionism, I mean, it's Jewish people need to be in control of the homeland in order for the apocalypse to come. We got to bring that, man. Like, so yeah, that makes sense, right? The other piece you said there, Joe, like just that conflation of Jewish faith with the state of Israel being the same thing. I think that's one that, like, with all the Epstein stuff and the likely connections back to Mossad and the likely connections to the state of Israel, that's one of the things that, for me, when I think about the protocols of the elders of Zion, like this conspiracy theory that's been out here for 120 years, if the state of Israel actually did run Jeffrey Epstein as a source or employed him as an agent, they're feeding directly into this type of conspiracy theory. And then you've got that plus the fact that, Netanyahu, like you said, wants Israel and the Jewish faith to be seen as the same thing. Like, you're making a hotbed of hate, basically. Like you're enabling that by doing those two things, like by trying to connect those two things, right? You're giving more fuel to conspiracy theories like this because it is the easy answer. It's much harder to be like, okay, what is the problem here? It's governments that don't hold rich people accountable and exploit that fact, right?
Yeah, I think totally just like embedding personal identity with nationalism, totally the goal. And yeah, when it comes to any strenuous narrative on that, of course, like you have to either confront your personal identity, which, like, how many people are going to do that? Or you just have to fight it. I think I'm just going to fight it if it doesn't fit my, narrative, whatever. And that's what so many people do. They do it with the Trump thing. They do it with the Jewish thing. I'm sure I do it as like a lefty liberal with some lefty liberal things. No, we're just going to pay for healthcare. Shut up and stop talking about it. It's just going to happen, So I'm sure everybody can get entrenched into their own things. But yeah, I think the important thing is to separate them out and, get into them, which is what we're doing. So it's good. Separate the Jewish and the Jewish, the American and the American. It's all.
Yeah, after your comment just reminded me of that Howard Zinn line that's like we talked about before, but it's like, it's important not, I don't remember how he phrased it exactly, but it's important not to accept the memory of states as our own. And this is an example of that.
Yeah,
the Israeli
totally.
state is like, oh, our memory is you, all Jewish people. No, it's different.
Does Israel not have term limits? I was just curious with like Netanyahu's. It's like thinking about the videos we've seen of him since like the 80s and the 90s, like maybe get some term limits.
I don't know if they have term limits.
Yeah, go get some term limits. Although they don't do anything. Get the warning.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like it's crazy that he's still there. Like it just like he's gone through the same. Well, not the same, but I mean, also a convicted felon by his own government, and somehow the leader of that government. But going back, I think just to tie this back and close it out to close this out and tie it back to something that we talked about earlier was Ro Khanna's speech where he says like the Epstein class. Like he's trying to group these people clearly. And I think that's good. I don't know if the Epstein class is the thing that'll stick. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But like whatever that group of people is, the people that are named in those files, like I completely agree. Bring all of them in, and then let's figure out, from there. And then that is the group. It's not scapegoating if those are the people that actually did it, right? All right. Well, that's it for this. So just be on the lookout. We'll include the link to this specific article in the show notes, so you can dig into that more if you like. And yeah, if you come across anything that's alluding to this on the internet, send it to us, because it'd be interesting just to see where this starts to pop up over the next few months. Hey everyone, wanted to give a quick shout out for a specific podcast episode that I listened to over the week. If you are interested in climate protection and protection for the environment and regulations around that and want to understand what this administration is currently doing, there's an episode of The Daily, which is a podcast that's run by the New York Times. And this one's called The Secret Plan to End U.S. Climate Regulations. It's about how a small group of conservative activists have worked over the last decade plus to pull back, like, basically cornerstone climate regulations and findings that underpin how the Environmental Protection Agency is able to regulate greenhouse gases. And so it's a really interesting look at how small groups of people are trying to pull this away so that the Environmental Protection Agency no longer has that capability, which would essentially limit the U.S. government's ability to regulate any type of man-made climate change. So podcast is a really good episode on that, has some great insight there. Again, the title is called The Secret Plan to End U.S. Climate Regulations, and we'll include that in the show notes should you want to listen to it. I think that's it for closing out. Do you guys have any plugs or anything that you wanted to hit on? I think on our side, the ABFC Atlantic Voters for Change hub is still open a couple days a week. After Winter Carnival, it's still going to have the displays and everything up there. So if you want to check it out, you didn't miss it. If you missed Winter Carnival time, just come on in.
You're just thinking about the season and how the ice in this region is finally melting this week, and how it's time to start thinking about seeds and planting and all that stuff. And just give it all the context of stuff you mentioned earlier about the EPA and all these regulations are getting rolled back. It's a situation now where, I mean, we're well aware that corporations will do terrible things to the people who consume their products just to turn a profit. Google the history of the Ford Pinto, if you don't believe me. And yeah, we don't often know what's in our food and what we consume in terms of pesticides, in terms of additives. There was one company that got caught adding lead to their applesauce packs just to make the shipping weight a certain amount so that they could profit off of the shipping, and didn't give a shit that people were eating lead in the applesauce. So it's really hard to trust our food sources in a lot of ways. And so I guess my plug is, if you have the privilege of having some kind of, even just a backyard garden or something, you can start growing some veggies or get together with your neighbors and organize ways to grow food together. Definitely a good time to start building those basic resiliency mutual aid practices. The more we can all learn to grow some basic foodstuffs and share them with each other, the safer we'll all be, regardless of what the corporate government overlords are trying to do to us. Grow food if you can. Yeah.
I got no plug. I love the food thing. The FDA is like headed by some anti-FDA guy. Johnson & Johnson knew about some baby formula crap for months before that. You know, it's like, it is wild what they allow and the standards that have really gotten lowered. I love it. Grow your own food. There's a great book I read called Carrots Love Tomatoes. It's about pear gardening, you know, because the nutrients, they feed off of each other. So that's all.
We've grown tomatoes pretty successfully, but we struggle with the carrots. So
carrots love them.
Carrots love tomatoes. Okay.
Yeah, I'll never forget it because it's the title of the book.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening and hanging out with us.
If you enjoy the show, help us spread the word. Leave a rating or review and share it with your friends, family, or anyone you think would get something out of these conversations.
Your ratings, reviews, and shares help this show grow, and the more people listening, the harder it is for propaganda to win.
So until next time,
stay aware, stay safe, and remember,
propaganda loves you.